So I'm a professor. I teach in a great books program, but most of the time when I'm teaching, I'm also learning. And sometimes the things you learn are uncomfortable. Like last week, I was preparing lecture notes for a class on Oedipus Rex, and I ended up having an existential crisis at 11:55 p.m. on a Tuesday.
The problem of yourself cannot be escaped. I can't not be that way. It's time to go, it's time to go, it's time to go, it's time to go. And that I would like to not have been who I am, but it is who I am.
You know, I've been teaching these books for over 15 years now, and in my experience, they can teach you a lot about yourself, but learning about yourself is not always easy. Take, for example, the lessons we learn from Oedipus Rex. Now, Oedipus Rex is a very famous play. It's written by the ancient Greek tragedian Sophocles. Oedipus Rex is arguably the most famous Greek tragedy. It might even be the most famous play ever written. Sorry, Hamlet. And I've read this play a lot of times before. I've taught it before, but I think this time through, I learned something that I can't unlearn. I saw something I can't unsee. And I think it's an important lesson, so I want to share it with you here. Now, you probably know the story of Oedipus Rex, but you've maybe never thought very much about how it applies to your life, to you and me. So let's talk about the story. We'll refresh our memories, go over the details, and then we'll talk about why it's going to keep me up at night for the next bajillion years.
It's like that.
Oedipus haunts my dreams, okay? Let's go. So Oedipus is born in Thebes, but as a baby, his parents, who were the king and queen of Thebes, Laius and Jocasta, they received this prophecy. And the prophecy is that their baby boy is going to kill his father and marry his mother. Awful. Nightmare fuel. So Laius and Jocasta respond by sending Oedipus away. They want him to be abandoned on a mountainside somewhere. And they give the baby to this shepherd whose job it is to dispose of this doomed baby. But the shepherd is not heartless. And so he gets it in his head that he's just going to give the baby away to someone else. So he gives the baby to another shepherd who in turn takes the child to the king and queen of Corinth, who are themselves childless. They want a baby, and so they raise Oedipus as their own. Now, Oedipus is raised as the prince of Corinth, but then when he becomes an adult, he himself receives the prophecy that he's destined to murder his father and marry his mother. And so Oedipus thinks, understandably, I don't want that to happen, so I'm going to run away from home. I'm going to leave town. So Oedipus leaves Corinth, and on his travels, he runs into some random guy at a crossroads. They get into an argument. Violence breaks out, and Oedipus kills this guy. And you guessed it, or you already knew, this random stranger that he meets at a crossroads is King Laius, Oedipus's real father. Later, Oedipus arrives in Thebes, and he finds out that city is suffering under a sphinx's curse. And this monster will not leave Thebes unless someone solves its riddle. I don't know, sphinxes. Let's see if you can solve the sphinx's riddle. Okay, here it is. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, and 3 legs in the evening? The answer is a man. One man. See, you start as a baby, crawling, and then as an adult, you walk on 2 legs, and then as you get older and your body gives out, you need a cane and you walk on 3. So Oedipus figures this out. He solves the riddle of the Sphinx, and as a reward, Thebes is so grateful, they make him the king of Thebes and marry him to their newly single queen, Jocasta, who, as you will recall, is Oedipus's real mom. Because Oedipus was destined to kill his father and marry his mother, he left Corinth to try to avoid that fate, and by trying to avoid the fate, he ended up killing his father and marrying his mother. Now, Oedipus doesn't know this. He doesn't know any of this stuff until he's called upon to investigate the death of his predecessor, King Laius. Did I say predecessor? Predecessor. And as he figures this out, he first figures out that he's the guy who killed King Laius, and then he realizes that he's not the man he thought he was. He's actually this other guy, and his parents aren't his parents. His actual parents are his wife, mom, and his murder victim dad. Now, this all seems like a very unrelatable story, right? Unless you're Sigmund Freud. On one level, Oedipus Rex does not seem like a cautionary tale because it's unlikely you are going to get some bizarre prophecy about parricide and mom marriage. So is there a lesson to this play? Something we're supposed to learn? Well, here's what I want to argue. Here's what I think I have figured out and I don't like. I think we are all Oedipus, and the terrible fate that Oedipus suffers applies to us all. Now, before we get into that terrifying insight, how about maybe subscribing to the channel? Around here, I try to use classic text, literature, philosophy to help us understand ourselves and what is wrong with us. That's what I'm about. So click the button and hit the bell. Okay, now for an analysis of Oedipus Rex, to understand how Sophocles' play applies to us, how it applies to everyone, we have to talk about fate. Oedipus seems like a man who is cursed by fate. He tries to avoid his fate, and by trying to avoid that fate, he only brings it about. He does the very thing he's trying not to do. And in this formulation, fate seems like a kind of mystical, mysterious, inscrutable force. But fate might not be so mystical. It might be something very ordinary. We like to think, especially in like the modern world, we like to think that we're free. We like to think that we can reinvent ourselves, that we can decide for ourselves what kind of person we want to be, what kind of life we want to live. We think that's up to us. But a lot of our lives might be governed by fate. Just ask yourself this question. Is everything in your life subject to choice? Is everything in your life subject to choice? Absolutely not. Lots of things in your life are not subject to choice. In particular, you might think about the conditions of your birth. Were you born wealthy? Were you born poor? When were you born? At what moment in history? Where? In a small town? In a big city? How has that shaped who you are, how you think, the decisions you make, the kind of life you're able to lead? Now, the conditions of your birth might not be all powerful. They don't completely determine the outcome of your life, but we'd be pretty naive if we say where and when someone was born, what kind of family they were born into, their class, socioeconomic class status, that those things have nothing to do with the course of that person's life. We know that that's true. And in my reading of Oedipus Rex, or in Greek tragedy more generally, I would say fate is in part a kind of symbolic image, a way of talking about the condition of human life, that much of your life is not subject to choice. Many aspects of your life are not subject to choice. Another big one, mortality. We all share that fate. That's not up to us. This is something that the ancient Greeks understood, that we as mortals are fated beings. But this gets a little, I think, a bit more painful. This is really the thing that has kind of pushed me over the edge a little bit. Oedipus spends the whole of the play, the whole of Oedipus Rex, trying to understand who he is, and who he is depends on who his parents are. He's trying to understand his origins, where he came from, who he is. And the thing is, Oedipus tries to escape. He tries to get away from who he is. He's given this prophecy and he thinks, no way, not me, I'm skipping town. But he can't escape. He can't get away. He can't escape who he is. And this, I think, is the insight that's plaguing my brain, because we so often want to escape ourselves. We want to be different than who we are or what we are. And in some ways we can. We can change. We can be different. We can grow. That's possible. But I think there's also aspects of ourselves that we would like to be rid of, or we would like to overcome, that we can just not. Here's an example that has to do with myself. My brain works in terms of time. I think about how long things are going to take. I plan out my day around time, around scheduling. I get kind of frustrated if things run over time. I don't like being stuck places and not being able to like leave in the amount of time I think I should be able to leave. This is just sort of how my brain works. Sometimes this is a problem for me because I have colleagues and friends and I have a family, and I'm just not always in control of my time. And so it's frequently the case in my life that I will get stuck places in a long line. A meeting takes longer than it's supposed to take. I'm at a party and I thought it would be over by now, some kind of function, and it's time for me to go home, and I can't leave. And here's the thing. It's for most people, this is not a big deal. It's not a big deal to be like, stuck somewhere for half an hour or an hour. Who cares? Like, whatever. You're stuck in traffic. You're stuck in an awkward dinner party. You can't leave. Who cares? Whatever. What's the big deal? But inside my brain, it's a big deal. It can't not be a big deal. It stresses me out and it drives me crazy. And when I'm like stuck somewhere, I can't think about anything else. There's nothing else I can think about.
It's like a timer is going off in my head, and it's like, bam, bam, bam. It's time to go. It's time to go. It's time to go. It's time to go.
And all I can do, I can pretend that I'm unbothered, so that people who don't know me well would never notice that I'm like trying to crawl out of my skin.
I can pretend to be calm so that no one notices I'm being rude in my brain.
But I can't not be stressed out and bothered by it. Like that's just who I am. And I would like to be different than I am in this respect, but I can't. And I suspect that many of us, maybe all of us, have some aspect of ourselves that we would like to dispense with, that we would like to escape from. But Sophocles says we can't. And I think he might be right. The self is inescapable. Yourself is inescapable. And I may have made mistakes. Mistakes are another thing, that you do and can't escape from. Well, one of the mistakes, I went over this with my first year students this week. This was the first play I taught to a new group of students. And gang, my apologies. Maybe this was an error because, it's a bunch of people who are starting their university careers, this new chapter of their lives. Maybe they've moved to a new city, maybe even a new country. They're excited about their futures, and I'm telling them they can't escape themselves. No matter how far they run, their fate will find you. It might not have been my best teaching moment, but I think that this is what it means to become an adult in the world, like a grown person, to not think that you can run away from yourself and run away from your past to some degree. Again, you can grow, you can change, you can get over things. Like that's a real phenomenon in human life. But it's also the case that you can't be someone other than who you are. Wisdom is really about self-knowledge and figuring out how you are going to navigate the world, figure out your life, given all sorts of things that you can't control and can't change. How are you going to do it? Because you can pretend that you can just dispense with all the stuff you don't like about yourself, about the world, but that's kind of a delusion, I think. The self is inescapable. Listen, if you want to think more about this, more specifically more about fate and family, I made another video about this on Greek tragedy and family and how it shapes your fate. You can check that out over here. Click on that link. I'll see you there, and I'll talk to you soon.